On June 9th, Jupiter finally leaves Gemini and enters Cancer. In honor of this, I've got astrologer Eric Taylor here with me today from Big E Astrology. Welcome, Eric. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so honored to be here. And I just love talking astrology with you.
Yep, yeah. So I'm going to give you the floor initially for what are you seeing as kind of the big themes of Jupiter and Cancer?
Well, obviously it's exalted there. And maybe some people in the audience may not know that. It's at home in Sagittarius and Pisces, exalted in Cancer. But with Jupiter being our wisdom, beliefs, philosophies, expansion, abundance, can be the husband and the wife's chart or same-sex couple, you know, it really speaks to me that we've got an opportunity to bring in this divine wisdom and knowledge of nurturing, right? I always say, who's your first teacher? It's your mother. So that's why I think it's been designated as the exaltation in Cancer, right? Because the Cancer is connected to the moon and the mother and very much safety, security, and nurturing.
Mhm.
And I laugh, right? Because I think about these young kids, like, oh, I want to get the bag. Well, Jupiter Cancer is not always getting the bag. It's not always extreme wealth. Jupiter does well in almost every sign. But I noticed in Cancer, it's not extreme wealth the way you may see it in other placements. I think this is a time where we may see a lot of expansion where multi-generational homes where, in other countries, people will do that. America, we all separate, but you're starting to see the grandparents with the parents and the children in one home. And I think that could be something that really, increases during this time. But also, this is where we may start to get another correction in real estate, so there could be a lot of booming things with real estate. Obviously, we're still like hanging on a thread waiting for Powell to bring the interest rates down and is encouraged by Trump to do so, and he hasn't. But, neither here nor there, and debate whatever you want with that. But I could see, that kind of being some of the themes. But because when it comes in, it's conjunct Mercury and right off the bat squaring Saturn and Neptune, there's also going to be this hesitation where we've got to slow down. And
Mhm.
with it being the summer and this year transit, I think we all kind of want to return kind of back home. And it doesn't mean that you're moving with your parents or family, but some of that is feeling emotionally what makes you feel at home, what makes you feel safe and secure. And I wonder if Saturn and Neptune in that square will disturb some of our ability to see things clearly or to be as sovereign as we'd like. And I think these conversations of self-reliance and self-acceptance and independence, can be a twist or a battle. But obviously, I always think in a square, you look at the relationship, Jupiter wins out that battle. Saturn's in its fall, but Jupiter is exalted. So I think Jupiter will tell Saturn, hey, I got this. You calm down. But we still have to kind of pause.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that there is a return to our emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And I really could see where home can be a big theme, but that may be wherever home is to you, in your heart and what makes you feel safe and secure. So it's going to be fascinating.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and the thing is, we've had the squares with Jupiter and Saturn before, but this is in the new sign. And
Oh, yeah.
so, yeah, I feel like before Saturn kind of won, like some of those things around the holidays and everything, it was tough energy, and especially with families, there were a lot of tense moments. And I mean, I heard things from people where I was like, wow, the coal in the stocking energy was definitely up around that time. And I feel like with Jupiter in Cancer this time exalted, that we're likely to get more of that optimism, giving the benefit of the doubt, kind of the goodwill. I feel like that's gonna win out in that square battle. So.
Definitely. I hope so, right?
Yeah, I
And
hope
I
so.
love what you said about that because, Jupiter was debilitated in Gemini and then Saturn, in Pisces, it's whatever, whatever. But I don't like to throw people off, but Saturn's in its planetary joy in the 12th house. Not the same as Pisces, but
Uh-huh.
just, there are similar themes sometimes to signs and houses. So I could see where Saturn was kind of like, I got you, Jupiter. You do nothing, when you're in
Uh-huh.
Gemini. But this is also, it's a big difference, right? That was a mutable square. This is a cardinal square.
Mm-hmm.
And the cardinal is always about initiating, starting something new. So I'm excited. The promise of Jupiter and Cancer, for me personally, it's in my ninth house. So I'm like, okay, the book and then the second book, but also, yeah, I need to travel. I'm ready to travel. So I'm excited for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, and you brought this up a little bit, but with Jupiter in Gemini, it just seemed like there was such an information overload, just like nonstop, everybody, chatter, 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 too much information for anybody to even make sense of it or absorb it. And as we're nearing the end of that, it feels like people are almost like, no, I can't take any more. And I feel like it's going to be this return to more of the intuition, the emotional intelligence, even kind of feeling within like the limbic system and the
Hmm.
emotional body and just getting a little more in touch with the truth, very Jupiter as well, but getting more in touch with how do we really feel about things as opposed to so much mental chatter that can be a real distraction.
That's perfect. And you're so true. When I think of Jupiter Gemini, it's been like, whether it's regular media, social media, it's also just so much gossip, right? These
Oh, yeah.
salacious news stories, right? And with Jupiter Cancer, people forget. I think of Aquarius as like I know and Cancer as I feel. But they have an
Hmm.
interesting relationship where sometimes that Aquarius moon can almost behave like a Cancer moon. And I
Mm.
think with Cancer, because you feel, therefore you know. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of wisdom. People always think like, oh, sensitive, Cancer sensitive. But sensitivity is not a bad word, ladies and gentlemen, right? It really is, that the first of the water signs. But, everybody's like, oh, Scorpio so empathic, Sky, Pisces, psychic, intuitive. Well, Cancer, because of how they feel, they have that sage wisdom. And so that's why the exaltation works so perfectly there. And I think we are going to start to come back, like you said, into our bodies. I definitely think it's going to calm the nervous system, right? So much so of
Hmm.
getting that out of there. But then, soon after, right, July 7th, Uranus comes into Gemini. It's like, hey, I'm back for your nervous system. So we have a short window where we could like, anxiety and stress free potentially. But I think overall, we could see, a more of a organic or holistic approach to coming back to nature and Gaia, Mother Earth.
Hmm.
This as this enters, it's sextiling Venus and Taurus. So I
Hmm.
think it's
Yep.
really peaceful and harmonious to like, hey, everybody in the summer wants to, even though this is officially June 9th, is not quite yet summer, summer kind of starts off Memorial Day weekend for most of us in America anyway, right? But
Hmm.
I do think there will be this deep feeling that brings us information and knowledge that can be very comforting,
Hmm.
and I think we need that at this time, especially as it, leads into July 4th and Independence Day and all that. I think Jupiter Cancer will be really nice and can maybe shift some of the thoughts and experiences even in our own country at this time.
Well, it is interesting because the US natal chart has a lot of Cancer. I mean, the Venus is a 3 Cancer, US natal Jupiter 5 Cancer, US natal Sun 13 Cancer, and then Mercury I think is like right around 24, 25 Cancer.
Yeah.
So like and that Mercury point is where Jupiter's going to station retrograde on 11/11 this year. So,
Oh,
yeah, likely to be
that's a
a
good point.
big, Jupiter big time for the US, but I'm hoping kind of a little more optimism, because Jupiter can bring some of that optimism. And I think after the all this time in Gemini, people are a little discouraged by things, and part of it is all that mental chatter and the gossip and all of that, but
Right.
it feels like over the next year, we're likely to see kind of a little more buoyancy or maybe like a little more of a return in some ways for the US. But it is kind of interesting in that Neptune will be in, where Neptune was during the Civil War, and
Oh, yeah.
Pluto is, I mean, a lot of the Revolutionary War, even though 1776, Pluto was in Capricorn, and we just went through the Pluto return, but like a lot of the fighting and everything was Pluto in early
Pluto
Aquarius.
Aquarius, exactly.
And then
And then the
Uranus
natal
in
moon,
Gemini.
America's moon. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
so we're having like a lot of returns of the planets to where they were at key times. And I mean, that could be doom and gloom or something, but I don't feel like it has to be because what have we learned as a culture, but also as individuals? What have we learned? We've been through the ringer the last few years.
Well, you're so right. And then also, I think one thing that we learn astrologically from history, we're also having repetition, but we're going to have different and new planetary alignments. But we're also, I think what's different is we're not in the Piscean age anymore.
Hmm.
We're in the, as I like to say, pinky toe, like in the water, like at the beach when the sand is just wet, like Age of Aquarius. And we
Hmm.
are, some say, the crazy or the brave souls that chose to be here at this time. But I think we're here because we're able to awaken and to be a part of the solution and not the problem, to lay the foundation. And so these planetary placements and our consciousness and awareness, it's at a whole different level. So I think you're right that Jupiter coming back for America, and then I believe America's chart with the Sag rising has Mars and Uranus and Gemini, correct?
Mars is in no, Mars
Yeah.
is in Gemini,
Yeah.
yes. And yes,
Yeah.
Uranus at eight
Yeah,
Gemini.
so that's really fascinating, right? Because that was America's, that return as well, and that
Hmm.
was also the marker of the Civil War. But I just think that this is actually speaking to where, people have had doubt, but I think that we're gonna obviously he's calming it down with the tariffs, at least with bringing it back down with China. But I think that other countries are going to negotiate, and we're going to have maybe a financial boom, right? Think of the eighth house as other people's resources, right, and all that stuff, and IRS and taxes, different things. I think that we may start to, and it's not going to be June 9th, but September, after the eclipses, maybe around the holidays, we may start to see a little financial bounce back for the USA.
Hmm.
Maybe surprisingly so, but I can see with these alignments, and then the eclipses coming in August and September, this could be a huge shift that turns out to be extremely beneficial for the collective, but definitely for Americans.
Hmm.
You know,
And as far as people kind of leveraging the energies of Jupiter and Cancer, I mean, obviously a lot is going to depend on how is that interacting with your chart,
yeah,
but just in general, I mean, my thinking is a real focus on nurturing, and for some people that's going to be nurturing other people, but for people that are really wrung out and depleted, I feel like Jupiter in Cancer is kind of that time period where you can just kind of go, oh, there is enough to go around. There is enough. I can take a break. I can, get a massage, or I can do this splurge. And you want to be careful with Jupiter not to, overextend and
yeah,
overeat and overspend. But at the same time, for people who really have trouble doing that, I feel like it's kind of cosmic permission, right?
I love that. I love that. Yeah, don't necessarily go spend crazy and buy the mansion, like the extra big new home that you probably don't need and can't afford.
Right.
But I think it's more like the feeling and the EQ, right? Coming back home to self. And I
Hmm.
think it is going to be important to really, obviously we all do it in the summer, but I think we forget the other months, right? To spend more time out in the sun, right? And to spend more time in nature because it's going to be healing, right? Even doing your forest bathing, talking to the trees, I just, I laugh at myself because it's not anything that I ever thought that I'd be doing. Younger Eric would be, kind of making some jokes and teasing Eric currently right now. But, I'm proud to say that I'm a tree hugger. And, this opportunity to really reconnect to the ocean, to the trees, the plants. And goodness, with all this news I've been hearing, we've got to make sure that the bees are okay because they make all this thing go around. So, one thing I do like though, I think it's an opportunity when we think of Cancer, of the safety and security, it is more emotional. It's more
Hmm.
spiritual. And so where Jupiter and Gemini was attacking the nervous system, but all this chitter chatter and gossip and over information and the back and forth, especially with the squares, the Saturn and Pisces, I think Jupiter and Cancer, it may even make the education system less attacking, point finger at. We've experienced it with my own children, and it's just been really challenging the past year and so, with the kids in school. And hopefully this helps educators,
Hmm.
and just helps more of a, you know, how can we help your child to grow and learn to the best of their abilities? We
Hmm.
may also, Trump has made some changes where you can, and everybody can do more and financially be able to afford and do homeschooling. So that could be a big boom this year too.
Yeah, we could see more homeschooling for sure with Jupiter and Cancer, and also with Uranus and Gemini, because Gemini representing early childhood education. I think that combo, we're likely to see some new things, or maybe, what's old is new again kind of thing. Like it could be a return to more humanitarian kinds of, as in the humanities, right? Like
Yeah.
more of that broader spectrum, kind of what used to be considered a good education in the humanities. I feel like we may see more of that coming with Uranus sort of liberating people from standardized testing, liberating from
Yes.
all of
That
this
stuff
kind
is
of,
so
yeah.
silly sometimes. And it's funny that you say that. It's like, oh, you read my mind. I went to the high school for the humanities, Bayard Rustin High School for the Humanities. That's where I graduated high school in New York City. So that's really apropos when you said that. So funny. But you're right. And with Uranus Gemini, definitely the technology, right?
Yeah.
And I do feel that through this transit, even though, Jupiter and Cancer is the full year, Uranus and Gemini, we have the sneak preview coming up, and then we'll
Hmm.
permanently go in April of 2026 for 7 years, right? We're going to see a lot of shifts with technology. So I think this year of Jupiter Cancer, and then as we get to Jupiter Leo, that is really going to, being with Cancer and Leo being the most, kind of like associated with mom and dad, but just very, as they say in the Vedic, right, Sattvic signs, extremely pure.
Hmm.
I think that there's going to be a purity and a nurturing more for the youth that we've had in quite a long time, Jupiter Cancer and then Jupiter Leo, as we're doing the Uranus Gemini dance with
Mm.
Neptune and Saturn Aries as well. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And that may be better for these young, because let's be honest, like these young people, the 13 and under, the alphas, and then these new Pluto Aquarius babies who are like, whoa, they're like real magic. The
Hmm.
beta generation, you know, they they're not made for this programming, sit all day long, Rockefeller brainwashing, creating worker school system. We have got to imagine, reimagine, right? The mystery schools and
Hmm.
teaching them practical hands-on, like getting back to shop and trade schools, but living scientific experiments, right? Going to visit, Egypt and different places and like touching things and learning about astrology, numerology, and the ecosystem and all these things. We can reimagine schools, whether it's through homeschools or just people coming together and saying, you know what? I want to be that divine, sacred wisdom and knowledge teacher, and saying, I want to open up and reimagine a new type of school system, more like a Montessori mindset.
Hmm. Yeah.
That could be
The other
great.
thing that I'm excited about is the arts with all of this stuff happening in early Aries with Neptune and but especially the Neptune Saturn in early Aries. I feel like I mean the last time Neptune entered Aries was the Impressionists
Mm.
and I mean that was just like totally different. So what are we going to see this time? I don't know, but I feel like with Jupiter in Cancer for the start of a lot of this, we're gonna have art that is more appealing on the emotional level. And,
Mm.
beauty heals. There's actually in Traverse City, Michigan, there's like you can tour it. It's an old insane asylum, like a state hospital.
Oh, wow.
And their whole motto was that beauty is healing. And so like these people would go in there and you're cutting flowers. There were fresh cut flowers on all of the tables for every meal, and just things like that. I feel like life has gotten very angular and abrasive, and that whole North Node and Aries phase there for. I feel like we got a lot of
Almost
the
angry,
negative of
right? It's been
that.
angry. People have been like just, oh, this anger. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like the art that's going to be coming out is likely to have a kind of a softening and soothing effect. And I'm hoping more of an emphasis on the beauty as opposed to like, how do we get edgy here or how do we I
Exactly.
mean there's a place for that, but I just feel like it's gotten imbalanced and we're likely to see a little more of a correction.
I love that. And you'll see that, right, with the aesthetic with the sextile,
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
Venus, Taurus, Jupiter, Cancer. So that's really what you're saying. I could see that. And it's so funny because it's art, but at the same time, I think that we're going to see it with Neptune Aries, where we may imagine and reimagine new film industry, a new
Yes.
music industry where artists are not in this place where they've got to like sell out their soul and this and that and get ripped off and no money, where we're going to start to see new vehicles where musical artists will find the proper funds and support, just doing it on their own website and launching. Same thing with independent filmmakers. Obviously, Uranus Gemini supports that because there's going to be even more advanced technology where people are shooting movies, through their phones,
Hmm.
and there's a whole film festivals based around that. But the quality is so good now that it's opening it up, right? Where it's like a freedom and sovereignty, where it's like now everybody, right? Aries, independent. You make a film, you make your movie. It's not like the collective or depending on the authority structure systems like
Hmm.
Neptune Capricorn or something. It's Neptune Aries. It's like, hey, I can do it too. I can be
Hmm.
the independent filmmaker. So I'm excited about that. I think, that's going to be powerful. And they're going to be like, hey, we want to turn Laura Bruno's NDE astrology book into a movie. You know what I mean? And that's what we're here for.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Well, that's the
So,
stuff that I visually see. I think about those things, as I'm, finishing up my first astrology book and then getting to my near-death experience book. I I always see when I hear music or even when I write, I see the visual.
mhm.
I guess that's my Neptune and Scorpio, but I always like, just like, yeah, like my NDE story, it is a movie. You know what I mean? So like as I write it, I visually see it. And so that's going to be really important. But one thing I want to mention, that Mercury squaring Neptune, we're going to feel a little confusion there could be some areas where we're not sure about our family lineage or legacy or history. I
And this
laugh.
is right around June 9th, right? That's what you're saying
That's
that
what
they're,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Yeah, that initiating of that chart, that square, Mercury square Neptune, there could be a lot of misinformation
Hmm.
too. And there could be a lot of situation where, we're not clear about how we could be the individual within the family.
Hmm.
Or there's a story about a family member that comes out that you're like, oh, wow, auntie did that or uncle so and so did that. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
when you have Mercury square Neptune, there could be a lot of like truth on top of lie, a lot of deception, illusion, confusion, And now squares have opportunities for growth always. But this one seems like there could be some interesting challenges. And maybe, I hate to say it, there could be like when you think about families and our parents, passing away, children, debates or fights over property and land. The
Hmm.
Mercury in Cancer can be very nurturing and caring. I love when I meet people with Mercury in Cancer, but, there's also that retreat. I don't want to
Hmm.
talk about that. Don't bring that up from the past. So what? Someone did that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There could be a lot of like, I don't want to touch that topic because it doesn't make me feel safe.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and Pluto in early Aquarius quincunxes early Cancer too. And so, yeah, the old shadowy secrets are likely to get dredged up. And that's not to say it's a negative thing. I mean, I think that
Right.
we're in this process of purging and cleansing and moving beyond, and there may be necessary shakeups
Yeah.
where, it's not comfortable, but at the same time, maybe, when you reach a point of truth, you know it, right? Like if you've been living with gaslighting and lies your whole life, and then you finally admit the truth to yourself, there's such an expansion, there's such a coming home to yourself, and like an ability to nurture yourself in a different way, because when you're like listening to a bunch of gaslighting and all of that, then you're believing all of the stuff like, well, you don't deserve that, and who are you to stand up and have a boundary and all of that. And that's where I feel like the square from Saturn and Neptune actually may be really beneficial. Like it could be very helpful with Saturn the realist right there, with Neptune bringing in all the lies and the idealism that's not true,
Totally.
and then Jupiter going, but here's the truth.
Because Saturn's going to say, oh no, I am demanding the boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saturn in Aries is going to be like, I'm initiating the boundaries. You
Yep.
better respect them.
Yep.
It will look right at Neptune in the face and say, hey, you've lied to me for years. We're not doing that anymore. We're cleaning out the closets in this home and this family and this history. Pluto Aquarius is the divine wisdom and knowledge of revelation of truth. And so,
Mm-hmm.
I get excited, that we still got 19 more years of this transit because Pluto Aquarius is going to clean some stuff up and
Oh
out.
yeah.
And it's needed. It's long overdue. And I think that's what's been so surprising to me because I'm at a point now where I realize, like, oh my God, everything in my childhood was a lie, whether it's Disney movies or the history books or this and that. And so we have to come to terms that it's no longer okay or safe to play pretend and deal in lies,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, even with, I hate to say it, but even with like the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy, I mean, do we need to continue this stuff on? Right? They still will talk in schools that Christopher Columbus discovered America and be like, no, he didn't. So what are we really doing here? And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
time for us to, be adults, big boys and big girls, and to like not mislead the kids with these quote unquote safe lies anymore, because it doesn't serve them or us to continue the charade anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't. And so Pluto Aquarius, it doesn't want that. Everybody who's been lying, their time's up.
Yeah.
So this is really going to be a big time of freedom and liberation. And hopefully will turn our country on a path for the better.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the interesting thing with Saturn in Pisces is any sort of authoritarianism or anything like that is not favored during that transit. Historically,
Yeah,
people start seeing through
the
the
veil.
leadership, whether that's political, whether that's, religious or
Health.
health. Oh, definitely health,
Yeah.
but also education, like academia. I mean, just a lot of these institutions, if you look at the time that Saturn was in Pisces, just from March 7th of 2023 until May 24th of 2025, like what has happened with those authorities, they're all pretty much being like poked, 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 poked.
Oh, yeah.
But then you think of what does Saturn want to do? Establish a new foundation in Aries, the new. And so it's as you said, it's like a teaser, right? Where Saturn goes back into Pisces on September 1st. So it's
Yeah.
not very
It's
long in
quick.
early
Sneak
Aries.
preview.
But it's like surveying, like, okay, let's take a little survey here. Let's see where everything is. And then when Saturn goes back into Aries, I feel like it's gonna be like, all right, let's get to business. Let's build this new foundation.
Oh, yeah. No, and that makes me extremely hopeful because I feel like 2026, we're going to see the cementing of the sneak preview from this year, where
Hmm.
2026, it's like, oh, you thought I was joking? No, that system, that thing, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's no more like Bank of America, or there's no more paper money, or there's no more like it's gone. It was gone like a couple. You didn't realize, you didn't get the news report. So this is where I've been kind of like screaming at the mountaintops to people. A couple things, right? Even months before the election, that we have to become the president and leaders of our own lives, right? Stop relying on DC or external authority and leadership. And number two, that we also need to become our own media, right? We
Hmm.
can't get caught up in the television and the brainwashing and manipulation, but even also in social media, because social media, you're getting a lot of truth because you got boots on the ground in certain places where we couldn't get information before, but you're
Hmm.
also having a lot of right controlled opposition, truth on top of lie, deception through social media. So you have
Hmm.
to have spiritual discernment across the board. But I think that this opportunity where we can then in 2026 really kind of like like the scorched earth, and now you can see like, oh, what remains, and then
Hmm.
how do we build back better, and I think that's what Neptune and Saturn and Aries is really screaming to, where some people were so scared. I remember years ago looking at these transits, people like, oh, that's going to be a civil war, oh, and that's going to be this and American this and that, and I'm like, no, I think it's just us building kind of like the new earth the way that we really want it to be, that it
Hmm.
really serves everyone. And we walk into our sovereignty and we know that we, as a collective, because remember, Chiron's here for all this, we've got to stop playing small. We've got to walk into our I am energy as a collective and heal that wounding, no matter what your Pluto generation is, right?
Hmm.
We've all got to kind of be like, I am the I am, in my own world and my own self. And we've got to stop thinking, well, they'll do it for me. They'll do it. They'll fix it. No, we
Hmm.
are the people that need to step up. So I think that's going to be good. It will be uncomfortable for many, but the cardinal energy, it demands that, right? It's like, come on now, let's do it. It's time to initiate.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and I'm curious to see how the Jupiter in Cancer plays out in terms of the connection with the moon. Like, will we find that lunar effects are enhanced over the next
Mm.
year, like the new moons, the full moons, all of that? And I don't know. But that just occurred to me that
Yeah.
we may find that
Yeah.
there's enhanced energy around the moons over the next year.
That's going to be fascinating. I could see that playing out. And I could see the healthy continued rise and realignment of the divine feminine.
Hmm.
And because I think because of the sort of the deception and lies of like women's lib and to get women out of the house so then we could, have the kids be controlled by the school system and then have more women into the tax bracket for the IRS, I think there's going to be more of a softening, a more
Hmm.
nurturing and caring aspect of women coming back into their divine feminine and really realizing that's not weakness, ladies. That's your power. Like
Hmm.
you are intuitive. You are turning a house into a home. You are the sacred wisdom keeper. You are the healer, the herb maker. You are the keeper of truth and legacy. Like that's powerful. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be a beautiful energy that that we've been missing. And that, guess what? 12 years ago, it didn't necessarily show itself that in 2013. You know what I mean? Because the alignments were different, right? Pluto was in Capricorn
Hmm.
opposing it, right? So, this is a different time and different alignments. And then at the same time, I think Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces risings, they're going to really be loving this.
Hmm.
Whether it's for their publishing or whether it's for their education for children or whether it's for starting their own business or exploring their own creativity and hobbies, traveling or walking into shamanism or becoming the guru teacher. This is going to be a wonderful time, I think, for the water ascendants as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And also, not necessarily a bad time for the cardinal signs. I mean,
No?
certainly like pivotal, lots of changes,
Yeah.
but I feel like they're necessary changes, and people are likely to feel things as a course correction more so than like a blind side. I mean, we may get information blind sides with Uranus in Gemini. I would expect that, but in terms of like personal sovereignty, personal nurturing, the balance between giving and receiving, those are the things that I feel like are likely to undergo a kind of course correction.
Well, I'm going to make you laugh. Do you think a lot of weddings for Capricorn risings and a lot of children for Pisces risings? I mean, quite literally, right? And just so you guys know, I mean, this is like astrology humor, but for the audience, when Jupiter transits the fifth house for Pisces risings, Cancer, you could see a lot of pregnancy. So if you're not wanting to have a child, do the precautions and be prepared. But, if you're looking and you've been ready and wanting, oh, this is going to be that time. So I I really think that we're going to see a lot of shifts around mothers and children for the better. But I like what you said with the cardinal risings because, obviously it's affecting the fourth, seventh, and 10th and the first for the cancers. Um, and so there could be shifts in career, in relationships, marriages, and in, things around the home or even, the homeland, for the
Hmm.
Aries risings. Are Aries risings going to like just be like, hey, I've got to join the military? I don't know. You know what I mean? But, there could be a lot of things where people, because Jupiter squares, they're they're going to be a little bit easier than, and you know what I mean, than a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh,
So the
yeah.
cardinal signs, they're going to just be okay. So let me ask you this: what do you think about the Cancer risings once July 7th comes in terms of like their I am energy, but then their dream life with Uranus in the 12th house for Cancer risings? Woo!
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also you generally you get a nice lift when Jupiter crosses your ascendant. I mean, people tend to respond better for you, to you. Your first impression is more dynamic, more charismatic. You have an uplifting effect usually on people. I mean, if you have something else right on your ascendant there in Cancer, like Mars or something, you could become extra confrontational or something. So that's where the personal chart makes the difference. But in general, yeah, I think people that have Cancer rising and really, I mean, Jupiter enters Cancer. on June 9th, and then it's like a straight run all the way until 11/11, all the way up to 25 Cancer. So it's like almost the whole sign gets covered this year. And then retrograding back to 15 degrees of Cancer. I think it stations direct on March 10th of 2026. So
Oh, okay. Wow.
that 15 Cancer, I mean, it's close to the US natal sun, but also very close to where Mars stationed direct. That was 17 Cancer that Mars
Right,
stationed direct. So
right.
we're getting, if you had a hard time with Mars retrograde, this is maybe the
Jupiter's coming to clean up the
icing or the
mess.
silver lining, right?
Oh, Mars and Cancer was tough.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I remember, was it like a year and a half ago, that 6 month transit with Mars and Gemini? Maybe it's 2 years ago now. That was pretty challenging.
Hmm.
But Mars and Cancer was a doozy.
Yeah, a lot of emotional outbursts and frustration and yeah. So I feel like people that got whacked by that energy are the very people that are going to be like, "Oh, Jupiter, thank you."
They deserve it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and you know what's so funny? There are times where I don't hardly feel Mars transits. But I gotta tell you, when it's in Cancer and Leo, and for me, that's my ninth, 10th house, but I don't know what it is. I definitely notice it more. If I'm being honest, when Mars is in Cancer or Leo, there has
Hmm.
been some real, and maybe it's just the people around me, but just
No,
even
I
as an,
heard it pretty universally from clients too.
okay, yeah. So that's what
Yeah.
I've been noticing too. Like it's been like, and in Leo, it's here for a while and it's here for this transit still. And there's a brashness and a boldness and, asserting from the heart. And, sometimes the Mars Leo can get overly confident and arrogant.
Hmm.
But I think that, one thing about, Gemini season and this energy, there's a measure of play.
Hmm.
And I think with Jupiter and Mercury in Cancer, this is going to be like family fun, family play, a little bit more time with the kids, board games, schools getting out, summer vacation. And so I think we kind of like all need that. Like this has been, I don't want to say like the cold, dark winter, but since January 1st,
Oh
I
yeah.
think the last 2 years, January came in and it was just like a straight run of like disaster, chaos. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, this year was insane, right? All that went down with New Orleans and, Vegas and this and that and all my, these explosions and drones. And so I think this is a summer where you may not be able to keep people inside. I think people are going to travel, be at the beach, and there's going to be a lot of joy and play.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I'm excited for this transit and this energy. And yeah, I think we all need it.
Yeah, and what do you feel like about like soul family? Because we're talking family, but it's not necessarily your blood relatives. It could
Yes.
be, but I feel like for the same energy, it could be your soul family and more people really connecting with those people where you're like, I know you.
Yes.
And it's not like I know you and we have a whole bunch of karma that we need to suss out, but more like I know you and this feels comfortable and familiar, even if you just met.
Totally agree. Because, you know, it's one of those things where I have to laugh and smile, right? Because like that's how I felt like when we connected, right? And started talking about astrology. It was just like my brain and her brain, like we just like we get it, we talk the same language, right, of astrology. And you don't always get that, right, with other
Hmm.
astrologers. And it's not like a knock on anybody. It's just you just don't always get that. And so I think that that is something that really speaks to what I was saying earlier, that these planet alignments are different. Our awareness and our consciousness is different. So Pluto Aquarius being here, Chiron and Aries, but all these different alignments, it is really opening up a whole new, right? Like finding your soul family or your tribe. And that can
Mm-hmm.
be in your local community or it can be over the internet. And you may
Right.
even find that more once Uranus comes into Gemini, where you're just like, these are my people. Like I go here every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. on this website because like I love these people and they see me and they smile when they see me. You know what I mean? You
Mm-hmm.
always say like if you right, if you walk into a room and people's eyes and faces don't light up, then you need to change the room. You're in the wrong room. And
Mm-hmm.
that could just be the same thing, whether it's like a Zoom meeting or a website or a community, whether it's local or over the internet. And so I think you're so right about that. And I think that's comforting, supportive, and it's going to be very friendly.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's an interesting thing because the whole Gemini energy is very friendly. It's a friend. I mean, it can be gossipy and snipey too, but there is a casual friendship thing, like, oh, hey, how you doing kind of thing. But with Uranus there, I mean, sometimes you get like the psychic downloads. Sometimes you get like those fated meetings, right? I
Yeah.
mean, when Uranus is involved, you're like, whoa, it
Anything
gets
could
your
happen.
attention.
Anything could happen with Uranus. I love that.
Yeah, so we should probably just say, because we've referenced it, but people might not know what we're talking about. So I've been on Eric's channel, which is Big E Astrology on YouTube, twice, and we met because Eric had a near-death experience, and I heard you talk on a podcast, and I was like, oh, I think I'll interview him for my book, and then found that we had all of these other things in common, and so, yeah, it's fun talking astrology with you
It's
just
cool.
because we don't do astrology exactly the same way. Like you use the whole sign houses and I
Yeah.
use Placidus, but even with that,
Doesn't
there's
even
just sort of
matter.
like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
mythological understanding and appreciation of like the symbolism and how it plays out in our lives.
It's like perfect simpatico. You know what I mean? Because I think overall, as I tell people, whether you do Western tropical whole sign or Placidus or equal house, or you even do Vedic sidereal, they are all just tools to get to the truth,
Hmm.
right? Everybody can, get truthful readings from you, from me, from a Vedic astrologer or equal house person. But I think that there is a level of, for both of us, using our intuition
Hmm.
and but also really wanting to be truth seekers and truth speakers and to be of service to the collective, right? To humanity.
Hmm.
And so when someone has that heart-centered focus, it's like a soul recognizing, and you're just like, yeah, yeah, no, no, exactly. But also just the perception of energies.
Hmm.
Because it's funny when you were talking about the Jupiter on the ascendant, that was gosh, I don't know how many years ago now, but when I think it was right around when Jupiter was on my ascendant in Scorpio, which is my Jupiter coming back home placement, that sparked the journey into astrology. As a
Hmm.
professional, was always into it for myself, but you know what I mean. But really learning, like, oh wow, there's more than a sun. There's a moon, a Mercury, a Venus. There's, you know what I mean. So, I think also you're going to find some Cancer risings really wanting to step into this place and share this sacred divine wisdom and knowledge and esoteric knowledge, and come into a place where maybe they're like, hey, I want to be an astrologer, a numerologist, a human design practitioner. You know what I mean? And I think that's just wonderful. I really do because it's so great, and I can't wait to read your book. You know what I mean? That's what I'm like. Oh my gosh. I mean, yes, I'm excited because I'm, part of it or whatever, and I love how you interviewed me and everything. But I just think the work that you're doing is brilliant, and I love how we were trying to kind of play astrological and spiritual detective, right, with explaining my NDE experiences based on the planetary alignments. And that
Hmm.
is, phew, mind blowing.
Well, thank you. But yeah, it's been blowing my mind pretty much nonstop since I
I'm sh
started this
I'm
research and just
sure.
the patterns that I keep seeing and there are very real distinct patterns that are showing up over and over again. And what's interesting to me too is that they're such incredibly individual experiences,
Yeah.
perfectly tailored to each person that's
Chart.
having their near-death
Yeah.
experience, and yet the sky speaks. The sky is coming right through, and you can track those themes very easily.
That's fascinating. Oh my gosh. You'll have to, so I know you're going to do a bunch on your channel about it, but I know for me, I want to have you back as a guest to kind of like bring that out to the collective in terms of, what is it in the book and in the charts and in the sky that kind of connect all these different things? Because as you said, it's so precise to an individual's chart, but then at the same time, it's like kind of like I think of the movie Clockwork Orange, but it is clockwork, right? Like moving this into that house and this and that
Hmm.
house and this aspect that does play out in someone's life that really explain their personal experience. And that is just like it's actually humbling. But then
Hmm.
I think about things like zodiacal releasing, like, or you know what I mean, or annual perfections. And these are these timing techniques and different tools that we have as astrologers that can even, you know, bring out that information even more, minute or detailed or specific. And it's just like, it kind of makes you like, okay, what's going on up there? You know what I mean? Like it's powerful.
Hmm.
And it shows
Yeah.
how powerful astrology really is, the map of your life and the remembrance of your soul, the birth chart. It amazes me every day. Don't you
Hmm.
feel that? Like for you, like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and the idea that we become more like our birth chart the more conscious we become. Like to me that's wild that like you're becoming more aware of things, you're becoming more of who you really are, and it's not like, oh, it's a free for all, but at the same time you're stepping into kind of like the highest blueprint for yourself. And yeah, I like astrology better for um like understanding events that have already taken place and understanding yourself, and then more just like a weather report, general weather report of, okay, these are the energies that you're likely to encounter. They could play out in these different ways.
yeah,
But I think that kind of hits the sweet spot, because if you're just only looking towards the future and only looking towards the transits, life will find a way to be like, ha, got in that way. Ha, I did it this way instead, you know?
no, no, no. You definitely, that's what I tell people. Stay in the present conscious now. You know what I mean? I also tell people, you know, everything's about evolving your soul. There are, you always hear, I'm sure you with clients, oh my God, I've got Mars in Cancer at the 22nd degree, or I've got this square that. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, oh, I've got Jupiter in Capricorn. I'll never make it. No. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I laugh sometimes because even as we're talking about Jupiter in Cancer, well, it's in its fall in Capricorn and it does just fine. Like I've seen so many people in Jupiter in Capricorn that they got the bag and the Bugatti. They're financially fine. And I
Hmm.
just tell people, don't let planetary falls or debilitated or in detriment, however you want to label it, don't let that scare you. Like it's a roadmap to let you know how you need to work with that energy.
Hmm.
So I tell people Jupiter and Capricorn, as long as you're organized and structured and have a plan and you're disciplined and put in the hard work, you can have all the expansion and blessings you want.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just letting you know it's got to be focused this way.
Yeah, I think of the natal chart as like your owner's manual. It's like, here's how you operate. And like there's no judgment there. There's
Yeah.
there's no uh insistence that this is better and this is worse. It's just like, well, this is how you're made.
Yeah,
And these
it's
are
just
your
this.
tendencies. And yeah, you could do it this way, but it's going to be really hard and you're probably not going to be rewarded for all that hard work. Or you could do it this way, which is going to be much easier.
Yeah,
And, it's maybe a little different than what society says, but it's going to work so much better for you
yeah.
because this is how you're wired.
And different from like your sister, your brother, your
Hmm.
cousin, your neighbor, your best college roommate. Yeah, that's so true. And I love to visualize, as you say it, visualize it that way because, if you were to like, get like a little owner's manual that has your name on it and you're like, that's exactly what the chart is. And you also have to know that it's like, you're built for this because it's what you selected, right?
Yeah.
You chose your parents, you chose, and that's a hard thing for people to swallow. Like, oh, I chose a drunk dad or an abusive mom. No, I didn't. And it's like, well, think of it on a soul level. What are the soul lessons, right, that are helping you evolve on this journey? And so get out of victimhood. There's no victimhood in the 3D or the 5D. And forgiveness is your superpower, right? Don't hold on to it. Forgive mom, dad, the eighth grade, the 10th grade school teacher, right? I had a guidance counselor. Oh, Eric, you'll never amount to anything with these grades. I was like, oh, you know. And then I remember, I would laugh because I would think, I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's watching me right now on Sopranos or Oz, or if he's, watching me now on Biggie Astrology. You know what I mean? So we always have to remember other people, they don't know you,
Right.
right? Jupiter, Gemini, they could just be yap, 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 yap talking. They don't know you. They don't know your soul. They don't know your chart. They don't know your makeup. So ignore the noise.
Hmm.
Turn that channel, you
Yeah.
know? And
Well, I actually feel like another way that the Jupiter and Cancer energy over the next year could play out is helping people to take that bigger perspective look at family
mm,
dynamics, right? Because Jupiter can see the bigger picture and is looking for truth, not looking for a particular ideology, not, Jupiter wants the truth. And so if you can pan back and get the bigger picture of family dynamics, whether they were happy, sad, or a mix, that's going to be helpful in the long run.
yeah, because it gives you what? New knowledge, wisdom, and information.
Hmm.
And that's the benefit of Jupiter, right? People don't understand though, right? Because one thing you have to be mindful for, and you said this earlier, right? If it's on your ascendant conjunct Mars, Jupiter can expand the challenge and the negative stuff too.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So this is where we have to be willing to embrace it, but don't just sit there, with the eyes wide open and, overly optimistic. Like, it's going to be the best time or best experience ever. It is very personal, right? So you
Hmm.
reach out to Laura, you reach out to myself and get that nuanced, detailed explanation for yourself, because
Hmm.
there's going to be some times where Jupiter could be expanding, Mars, Uranus, or Mars and Neptune, whatever you have your placements, and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel so good.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And sometimes literally you got to watch out because it could just expand weight in your body
Yeah.
on the ascendant. You know what I mean? So, that's where, especially water signs, they retain a lot of water.
Mm.
Jupiter, Cancer, Jupiter, Scorpio, Jupiter, Pisces, you have to be mindful of that as well too, which is why I think Pluto and Aquarius is so helpful, right? It's dealing with toxins and
Hmm.
detoxifying and, like I said, want to do a parasite cleanse, things like that. And so I think Jupiter, Cancer, right? Cancer is our chest, breast, and stomach. It's also an opportunity to try to improve your gut health,
Hmm.
to work on like the weight in your body, So I
Well,
think,
and work on having the really good nutrients in the food.
yeah,
In the summer, all, the access to all of the fresh produce. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
use it.
use
This
it.
is
Yeah,
this is
don't
the
just
time to
sit
use
there
it.
and just like every day eat greasy burgers and fry. Yeah, no, no, get some good water, some good fruits and veggies, and take care of yourself because I think it is going to be a lot of friendly fun.
Hmm.
If we had to like put a like a kind of inspiring title on it all, right? I mean, it's gonna be a lot of positive energy and positive feelings, but you don't want it to get into the gluttony.
Right. Yeah, you don't want it to get out of hand.
Yeah, because
So,
Jupiter can do it, right?
and that
Every
may be
day
the
we're at the beach
advantage.
drinking kegs of beer. Like, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, that may be the advantage of in the beginning with Saturn and Neptune
Square.
squaring
Yep.
Jupiter. So instead of just, hitting the ground running, moving all the way through Cancer, Jupiter's going to be like, "Oh, I can't do everything right now." That could be a good thing, you know?
So, what do you think when Jupiter squares Chiron in Aries?
Big opportunities for healing. That comes to mind. And the US natal Chiron is at 20 degrees of Aries. And so
Mm,
when Jupiter gets around 20 degrees of Cancer, we could see old stuff come up where we get the truth about it, and then the healing comes from the truth. That's the way
mm.
I hope it plays out.
It should. No, no,
I
you're
mean,
right. It
yeah.
should. And I just think that I think it's going to be helpful to making us more sovereign and independent, and a little bit of the self acceptance and self reliance too.
Hmm.
Because Jupiter, I love how you say, the truth and like the law, but it's also going to, I think, expand, right? The a little bit of that kind of like clarity, I think, in
Hmm.
Cancer, that like, because Cancer kind of, it already knows. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I always think back to my Cancer aunt that I had as a child, and it's like, she already knew. When she would ask the questions, she was just going to see what you were going to, answer. But the
Hmm.
Cancer energy, because of all the feelings, it gives them so much information that is not spoken.
Hmm.
So they already know. You know what I mean? So it's almost like the whispers from the ancestors. And that
Hmm.
makes me think of the association of Cancer, fourth house, roots and ancestors, the mother's lineage, right? We
Hmm.
may get some of these, downloads and hits, like, oh yeah, grandma used to do that. She always put the cayenne pepper in here and said, oh baby, that's going to keep your blood flowing. Now I know why she said that. And, and always cut you that fresh ginger and turmeric. And then, you know what I mean? So I think we're also kind of, it's almost like an homage to our grandparents, to
Mm.
our lineage. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Because I just remember my grandma from Tampa, Florida would like make homemade like cakes and ice cream, and she would send me a birthday cake in the mail. But like I just felt like she just always knew,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's really a nice energy, and especially for this year, right? Because remember, I think people forget, where Jupiter is aligned. It's this transit. It's a full year, but it's at a half year point, right? In June, that's the year's half
Right.
over. So it's like it's overlapping of 25 and 26. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? So calendar wise, it's a year, but it's in two different years. And so I think that it's going to, obviously with aspects and everything, play out quite differently in 2026.
Hmm.
So
Oh,
next
yeah,
year than it does
definitely.
in
Well,
2025.
yeah, because in the beginning of 2025, we get the squares from early Aries, but also the Sun and Mercury and Venus. It's like all of this energy ends up coming there in pretty short succession after Jupiter enters Cancer. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like I mean, I've been describing 2025 as like the long, slow slog of 2025. And I've been telling people it's gonna start shifting. Like in late May, when Saturn moves into Aries, like that's when things start picking up. Then we get June 9th, Jupiter in Cancer. We get July 7th, Uranus in Gemini. And it's like, okay, now the new energy is starting to roll.
And then our
So,
friendly
yeah.
eclipses, August, September.
Yeah.
So what about Jupiter trining the Pisces North Node?
That's going to be fascinating. Yeah, I think that's going to be very spiritual, very heightened empathy, heightened intuition. We could, I mean, it's not really negative, but just I see Jupiter a lot in death transits. I'm not the only astrologer that's noticed that, but just, death is an expansion. So we could see people that have been kind of hovering between life and death that they make kind of a glorious exit, or, it's like it's
Mm,
a good day to die kind of thing. We may see
that's
some of
interesting.
that. Not to be morbid,
Right,
but
right
because
now.
sometimes it can be a very beautiful experience.
Well, and also I think we're going to have an heightened ability to spiritual gifts.
Hmm.
That's what I'm sensing too, because, you know, with North Node and Pisces, if we're really putting in the work, and absorbing these lessons from Saturn being there with the spiritual discipline, you know, obviously, whether it's Dr. Joe Dispenza or other spiritual scientists and different people, studies of brain health, studies of CBD, THC, ginkgo biloba with the brain, but, even microdosing, but
Hmm.
even more importantly, measuring the brain during, after, and through meditation.
Hmm.
And that's where we're starting to see, almost like I laugh, right? But it's true, where science is finally catching up to spirituality.
Hmm.
And I think Jupiter trine North Node is going to kind of like almost like install that to improve our overall health, mind, body, spirit,
Mm.
with that like coming home to this higher EQ and spiritual gifts and abilities and consciousness.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm looking forward to in 2026. Because now you said it goes retrograde on the 11th, 11
Hmm.
at 25. So then
Hmm.
it's going to they'll probably kind of meet more so in September, right? That trine.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have the exact
Yeah, I don't
date
know the
for
exact
that,
date,
but
but I'm thinking that, because I mean, I'm surprised. Like North Node of Pisces is moving; it's already like at 24. So
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
and you forget, that it like it's like it has its own, it comes in and it's there till, came in January 10th and it's there till like July 2026. But it has a time where it's like, wow, it's kind of moving quickly, and then it just kind of like slows down.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And you kind of almost forget about it. But so that's where I'm seeing where, we'll have this energy, and I bet like right as we're getting into around Labor Day,
Hmm.
it'll probably in, late summer be in that area where you're gonna feel this like, and which could be nice, as I was saying, right, for back to school,
Hmm.
for like a real positive start of the school year. And I just think Jupiter in Cancer is really going to benefit educators, teachers, mothers, and children, students.
Hmm.
Really
Yeah.
sensing that because I think there's been a lot of weird energy with Cancer. Because, see, just like how you said how Gemini is early education, right? Well, and I think of Cancer around like, educating and teaching and safety and security in schools. And I bet that, I don't know if we could research this one, but I wonder if when Jupiter's in Cancer, are there less school shootings?
Oh, yeah, that would be very interesting. Yeah, I don't,
We'll
that's
have to.
not something that I've researched,
No,
but
no. I bet, I don't know if there's an astrologer alive that has, but I bet that this, we can just monitor, right, from June, obviously starting in September when they go back to school, but this whole school year coming up from September 2025 to June 2026, we'll have and we'll be able
mm,
to see the data, how it compared to even just the last couple of Jupiter transits, So that's going to be
hmm.
fascinating to pay attention to.
Yeah. So,
I'm excited
well,
about it.
we're getting a little past an hour, so probably should kind of wind things up. But
Yep.
how do people find you?
Well, I am everywhere. Nah. Um, well, my website first, biggieastrology.com. And on all the social media platforms, I'm just under, BIG, right? It's behind me, BIGE astrology, Big E astrology. Um, and that's on even on X, TikTok, which those I say those first because I'm the least active there, but definitely really active on YouTube and
Hmm.
Instagram. And I have my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast, which, I was so honored to have you on twice and always look forward to the third visit as well. But, I try to do a couple of podcasts a week. Share a lot of videos, obviously full moons, new moons, but just really try to inform, educate, and inspire people through this powerful ancient occult knowledge, So, and people can on the website order services, and they can also email me directly, Eric, ERIC, at biggieastrology.com.
Great. And yeah, check out Eric's channel because yeah, you are very prolific on YouTube. I cannot keep up with all of the videos,
I
but
don't know if anyone can keep up with me. And I'm guilty as charged. That's my cat moon, you guys. It brings me joy, but I just love to work. You know what I
well, you
mean?
got that Mars and Virgo too. You're just like a workhorse.
Yeah, no, I
So,
know. It's so funny. Another astrologer said that they were like, "Oh my gosh, all that Earth stuff, and the Mars and Mercury and Virgo, and all that, and then the Capricorn moon." Yeah, it is definitely a situation where, and I was just like, it's so funny as we were recording this today. I was saying to myself, like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't record my Gemini new moon video. That's coming out on the 27th. That's going to be on the 27th. I got to do that tonight or early tomorrow morning. You know what I mean?" So, but I think for me, I just want people to know that it's important, right? When you connect with someone like Laura and myself, just to feel things in your heart chakra,
mhm.
because I think that's what I loved when I first met you, that, I could tell right off the bat that, you're not in this for the fame and glitz and glamour. You're in this to do the work, right? And
Mhm.
to help advance the collective and people in their individual journeys and lives and to reach and touch souls. And that's how it is for me. And I think
Mhm.
that that's what anybody should want in their astrologer, is someone that's authentic and passionate and dedicated, but also someone that's going to speak the truth to them,
Mhm.
to help them on their journey, to improve their lives,
Mhm.
so
So, well, thank you for
thank you, my
joining me
friend.
today, but also just for everything that you're putting out there in the world. So,
Thank you. I
always a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Well, this was more than fun, and I love being here with you and talking about Jupiter and Cancer with you.
All right. Well, I'll have you on again sometime and we'll do another transit.
Sounds
So,
fun to me, my friend.
all right. You take care.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.